Okay, so in this video we're going to start talking about variation between two variables. So now that we've talked about proportions, now we can start talking about when we talk about variables being proportional in a way, okay, where they have different variations that are going on. Okay, so what I mean by that is we can set up proportions in more of these application type problems. We're going to be given information and we're going to be told how one variable changes with respect to another variable. And that's going to allow us to be able to set up proportions based on the understanding of that variation, right? Okay, so again, phrasing is going to be very important, and you reading the problems carefully is going to be very important in order to set up the problem correctly. So now that we've talked about proportions and how to handle and solving proportions, now we can start talking about variation, and then when we look at problems, we can interpret those and then set them up appropriately, okay, and correctly. Okay, so in this video we're going to start talking about direct variation. Okay, so what does it mean for one variable to change or to vary directly as another variable? So for example, you'll hear common phrasing that says that X varies directly as Y. Okay, so you'll see this phrasing, okay? Or you'll hear that X is directly proportional to Y. Both of those are saying the same thing. Okay? What does that mean? Well, what this means is as one variable is changing, okay, for example, in this case, if one variable increases, then so does the other variable. If one variable decreases, then so does the other variable. Okay, and so this comes up in a lot of data when we collect data on two variables and we want to compare two variables. This comes up quite a bit. Something like this might happen. So we have X and Y. And so we get this data that sort of looks like it forms like a straight line, like a trend that goes upward like this. And so this would be an example of two variables that seems like they vary directly with each other, because as one variable increases, so as X increases, so does Y. But you can also go the other way. As X decreases, it seems like so does Y. Okay, so something like this would be evidence that they're directly proportional, or X varies directly as Y. Okay, now the other thing too is to understand the difference between variables in the fact that we want to make sure that we choose the independent variable and the dependent variable. So what does that mean? Well, the independent variable is the one that you can make anything. It's not dependent on anything, okay? And the dependent variable is the one that's dependent on the value of the independent variable, okay? So for example, if I give an example of I'm selling apples, okay? And I'm looking at my revenue. And so there's a relationship, right? There's a direct relationship between the number of apples I sell and my revenue. The more apples I sell, the more revenue I get, right? So that would be an example of two variables that are directly related or directly proportional, right? So the number of apples is directly proportional to the amount of revenue I earn, okay? Or I would say that, hey, the number of apples I sell varies directly as my revenue, okay? Because as the number of apples I sell go up, so does my revenue. As the number of apples I sell go down, so does my revenue, okay? So again, I hope that makes sense. That's all you really need to know is is what that means. Now, knowing what that means is important because that's going to help you set this problem up as a correct proportion. Okay? So again, also make sure that you know what the independent variable and the dependent variable is. For example, the independent variable in my case with the apples being sold versus revenue, the number of apples sold is the independent variable. The amount of revenue that I earn is the dependent variable because it depends on the number of apples I sell. Okay, that's it. So next time I'll put out the steps of how we solve these types of problems and then do some examples.